Hello guys, and welcome to the question and answer session that only came about due to the fact that I had enough questions from you guys. So thanks very much for everyone who sent me a question. I did want to do a Q&A session from the very start, but obviously it wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have the required amount of questions. So then, we'll make a start.
Right, so question number one is from Call Honk. What size wheels and what offset and what size tyres, please?
So the wheels were actually made to order. They're 15s, obviously 13s is a standard Escort size wheel. I decided to go 15s to fill up the bubble arches because I just feel that they need a bigger wheel to fill the bubbles up. So they're 15-inch in size and they're 8-inch wide. Now as for offset, they're not actually a specific offset. What I did was I done a plumb line. So you take a string plumb line as you would use for doing wallpapering, and I hung it down from the lip on the arch on all four corners, and when it became perfectly steady I took a measurement from the hub face to the string, and then I ordered the wheels so that I would have the perfect offset so that they didn't catch the lip on the arch but they filled the arches up. As you know, as of late I've had to swap the front and rear wheels round to make it work properly, but that's just one of them things. Tyres, it's got 215 45 R15s. I couldn't really go any less than a 45 profile without going into like a motorsport tyre. I would have liked to have went slightly less on the profile to give more clearance, but it wasn't going to be possible without going into silly priced tyres and tyres that aren't road legal. So we stuck with the Toyo Proxy 215 45. And they seem to fit nice, and I've had some decent comments about them as a tyre. So yeah, time will tell whether they're any good, but we'll keep our fingers crossed for that one.
So question number two is from Benjamin Benson. Why a modernish engine? The rest of the build has been aimed at originality. How come you didn't fancy a twin cam or such on carbs?
Obviously, that would have been the nicest option, would have been to go for an original engine, to go with the original build. But what I found with the Mini was I spent so much money on the build, and the biggest chunk of that money was on the engine. I went absolutely crazy with money on the engine in the Mini, and I thought I can't justify doing that again. And when you look at what's available for the money, so you can get a Duratec or a Z-Tech or an ST for a couple of £100. And with the ST170s, I know they say they're 170 brake horsepower standard. Whether that is actually the case, you know, is some people say that they don't make anywhere near that. But they do produce a decent amount of power for a relatively low cost. So I've been able to do the engine build in this for a fraction of the cost that I did the one in the Mini. Now, I did have to cut my cloth somewhere. I spent a lot of money on the body shell. I spent a lot of money on the paint job. I've spent a lot of money on the right parts to get it looking right. Somewhere along the line I had to, you know, cut my cloth accordingly, and the engine was basically where I decided I could get good power for a much less price basically. So I ended up, I wanted an ST170 from fairly early doors, and a good friend of mine, Andy, you'll see in many of the videos, him and his dad, actually went to our local scrapyard because they found out that there was a Focus ST in. They ripped the engine out of the Focus, and one day I was working away on the body shell and they pulled the pickup truck onto the drive and said, come on, we've got something for you. And it was basically because I'd gave them a hand a few years back now, a good few years back, restoring a Series 1 RS Turbo body shell. So for that help, they basically went and got me this ST170 engine, which was a fantastic starting motor for the build. So I basically stripped it down, and you've seen in the videos it's had a rebuild. It hasn't had a full rebuild, but it's had everything it needs. And I reckon there's only about maybe £3 in the engine, maybe 4 if you price in the throttle bodies and stuff. But it's not a massive amount of money. It's a sensible amount of money. So yeah, who wouldn't love a BDA or a BDG or a Milton Diamond or an original Lotus twin cam, something like that? But it was basically down to cost that I decided I'm gonna be a bit more sensible on this one. So I decided to go for a modern engine that you can get for sensible money.
So question number 3 is from Dudley Wardley. How much was the build cost, and have you any plans to do another build in the future?
So last time I checked, we're talking a good few months ago now, it was just over the 30 grand mark. I reckon we're sitting at around about, if I was to have a decent educated guess, I would probably say maybe 35, 36 grand, which sounds a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But when you consider that it's been over 6 years, so it's been over a long period of time, it's been dribs and drabs here and there. When you consider what the likes of Motorsport Tools are selling them for, you know, to similar standards, and when you consider what, you know, anywhere that would to build you one would charge, it, I think it's very reasonable, because I could actually make a lot more back than that if I was to sell it, which I've got no intention on in selling it. But yeah, it's a lot of money, but I feel like it's an investment more than anything. It's something that maybe one day in the very distant future I'll cash in on. Otherwise I'll just enjoy it, and I'll just enjoy it for the next many years to come.
It's 36 grand, but that's without your, like, having to pay.
That's without my time. Yeah. I actually worked out. It's a good point. I actually did work out not so long back. I sat down and I worked out rough how many hours I put into it, which is around about anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 hours. And when you multiply that by £30 an hour, which is nothing really, you know, £30 an hour is the minimum a guy should charge. I ended up being up to the 90 odd grand mark. So that's the difference. Being able to do it myself has definitely made a massive difference, because there's no way on earth I would be able to afford to do it if I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't afford them costs, not a chance. What was the second part that you want to do?
So the second part to that question was, have you any plans to do another build in the future? But also the next question from Robert Boardman is, what's next?
Right, so I think going forward, due to the fact that these projects swallow that much time and that much money, and the fact that I'm going to be starting a family going forward, I won't be doing another major project like this for quite a while. I'm going to be more focusing on doing jobs for other people. I've got 1 or 2 cars lined up that, you know, people want me to do little bits of body work on and stuff. I'm probably going to end up helping my mate, whatever bits and bobs he's getting on with as well. Eventually, I would love to do either you know, I used to watch American Hot Rod when I was a kid, and I used to love the Boydsters, the hot rods, and we don't have many hot rods in this country. It's very unique. I would love to build an absolute out and out amazing hot rod for the warm weather, for when I'm retired, etc. Or maybe an AC Cobra. I absolutely love AC Cobras, but I just feel that to do a kit car after I've done something to this kind of depth maybe wouldn't be too challenging, because it's basically a case of bolting parts on. Whereas my favourite part of the build, as you'll probably know, is fabrication, welding, making panels, making things fit. So it maybe wouldn't be the ideal project, whereas if I did a hot rod, I would have to actually make my own panels, so I would end up getting English wheels and stuff, and really going into new territory, learning new skills. So yeah, maybe many years to come, I'd love to do a hot rod. I think that would probably be where I'd want to go with that.
Regarding what's next, you were saying about doing some jobs on the Mini as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I do have some bits and bobs to do on the Mini. When I built the Mini, I was a lot younger than I am now, and as you get older, you mature, your tastes change, and I look at parts of it now and I think, oh, what did I do that like that for? So there is changes I want to do to the Mini, which I'm going to be covering on the video as well. One of them being the turbo oil drain isn't great. I want to redesign the turbo oil drain altogether. You'll see that in future video anyways. So yeah, I'll be pottering away on stuff. I'm always going to potter away on stuff, and I've actually realised after doing the GS, the video with the GS lads, how much I really thoroughly enjoyed doing a video on other people's cars. I always said I'd never do that, but that was a very enjoyable experience. I can understand now why the likes of, you know, Adam Smith, who started off just doing tinkering on his own cars, has now gone into doing videos on other people's cars, because I think it's really enjoyable. So that's maybe something else I'll maybe look at doing in the long term as well.
So the next one is just a mention to Andy and Joan Richardson. So the next question is from John Steele. What was the most challenging build? Sorry, what was the more challenging build, the Mini or the Escort, and what and why?
Easy, quite an easy question actually, but it did give me a lot of thought, this question. Definitely the Mini was far more challenging. The Mini is ultra modified. There's nothing standard on the Mini. I don't think there's a nut and bolt standard on it. Everything is an aftermarket reproduction uprated item, and as you know, with that kind of build, nothing ever fits properly. You have to machine things, you have to make things fit, and with a Mini you've got no room at all to get your hands in. This has been a joy to be able to actually see and get your hands at what you're doing, whereas the Mini, most of the jobs you do them blind, you're doing with your hand down the back, you're doing with a mirror to try and see around corners. It was a nightmare getting everything crammed under that bonnet to fit that twin cam motor in, you know, the turbo, the intercooler, all that. That gave me far much more stress than any part of the Escort build. The Escort build it definitely wasn't a doddle, don't get me wrong, but it was, because it's standard, everything should just bolt on. In most cases it does. There is the odd occasion where you do fight with things and you come in and you'll say, I'm going in the garage to do a 10-minute job, and then 3 hours later that 10-minute job's finished because it was a nightmare. But most of the jobs on the Escort were just a case of bolting on parts, whereas the Mini, everything was a fight, everything had to be modified, and everything was hard because there's just no space. So yeah, definitely the Mini was more challenging.
The next question's from Taffy Mark 1. What made you go for an ST170 and not a black top, Duratec or any other engine for that matter? So I think you've actually covered that.
Well, yeah, like I say, the ST170 was just because it was readily available. It's a decent starting power. They're a bit cheaper, and they're a bit cheaper to modify as well than the Duratecs, I believe. From talking to people about the Duratecs, apparently the Duratecs can be, you get to a certain point and you have to throw a lot of money at them apparently to get them over a certain threshold. The Z-Techs have been around for a long time, and to be honest with you, I actually look back now and think maybe I would have just went for a black top Z-Tech, to be honest, because I absolutely love the retro Ford BDA style cam cover, and as you know, you can't fit that with the ST170 engine, and I would love that look. I would absolutely love that look. And when you consider that you can get a brand new black top crate motor straight from Ford for around about 1,200 quid with 0 miles on, if I'd known that earlier on, I think that's probably where I would have went, because a brand new engine for 1,200 quid, and then you bought your BDA cam covers on, and they look $1 million. Oh, obviously you don't get quite the same power as the better flow an ST170 head gives you, but I think I would have settled for that just simply because of the BDA cam covers look so cool. But yeah, that's maybe one thing I would change if I was to go back to the start. But yeah, in hindsight's a wonderful thing.
So our second question from Taffy Mark 1 is, why 15-inch over 13-inch wheels?
Basically just because of the bubbles. I look at a lot of bubble arch Mark 1s and I always think they look a little bit lost on 13s. They kind of look like like a boot down a back alley almost. And I just feel, to get the look I was going for, that muscle car look, I wanted the arches to be really filled up, to really, to get that muscle car look that I was aiming for. So that was why I went for 15s. Originally I was going to go for 16s, but I spoke to a guy who, Stephen Spencer, who had a car that I absolutely adored from an early age, a Mark 1, and he had 16s on, and his did catch quite a bit. He told us, so I thought, right, I'll drop down to 15s, bit of a guess. And as you know, I have had a bit of catching issues myself, which I'm hopefully at the end of, sorting out now. But yeah, 15s were just to try and fill them arches up. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. And obviously, I went for an original RS style wheel to give a nod to originality as well.
The next question is from Mick Tuck on Facebook. Do you have photos of the build, and how did you do the rear tubs, including the bubble arch, please?
Yes, I actually put a video out quite a long time ago. It's still on YouTube. It's one of my videos, and it showed all the photos, or a lot of the photos. Took a lot of putting together actually, from the bodywork days. So it showed from the start right through to the car going in for paint. I am actually going to do a part 2 to that video eventually. I'm going to show from coming out of paint till completion using all the photos I've got. So yeah, that is something I'll upload in future. But as for the rear arches, I have definitely got pictures on that video. If you look back, I can't remember how long ago it is now. It's listed as something like slideshow, restoration slideshow, something like that. But it does show a bit of detail on them rear tubes, because basically I got some rolled steel sections, and I actually made them to fit between the inner arch and the bubbles, and I actually welded the lip on all the way around so you could spot weld the lip to the back of the bubble to reduce heat and distortion in the bubbles, rather than just MIG welding the lip to the back of the bubble, which would warp the bubble. I actually spot welded the lip to the back of the bubble because spot welds produce significantly less heat. So yeah, there is some photos of that in that slideshow. I'll maybe try and upload a few images into the video now if I can find them, and let you see some of them photos. I'll see what I can do.
So there's another question from Benjamin Benson. What was your introduction into cars and why minis?
I think it stemmed from when I was maybe early teens, going to the likes of our local vintage rally, Dizzington. That was always a common one I went to every day with parents. And I used to go to one at Flukeborough, which was another like steam gathering, and I quickly realised that I had a massive passion for the minis in particular. It was always the minis to start with, but then I always had the Escorts always swung me as well. I know I love Mark 1s and Mark 2s, I haven't really got a preference between them, to be honest. But them two sets of cars were the ones that always swung me in. I don't know what it was about the Mini. I got what's called the Mini bug. You get a bug where you get addicted to them, and they're an amazingly fun car to drive. Definitely one of the most fun cars I've ever drove. And from an early age, when kids were playing on the PlayStation, playing outside, etc., all I was doing was sat in my room with umpteen magazines and planning my first build from about 12, 13, something like that. So yeah, it was from a very, very early age, all I wanted to do was build a Mini, and the Mini that you've seen in the videos is the one that, the very first car I ever built.
The next question is from Chris Mason. I'd like to know what would be your dream build or rebuild? Dream build or rebuild?
Like I said before, maybe a hot rod. I love the Boydsters, the Boydster hot rods, and being able to do your own panel work, like you see the likes of Ron Cavell from America there doing, where he rolls his own panels around wooden bucks. And I'd love to get into all that. You know, I love metalwork, I love fabrication, but I've never done anything in that depth, and I'd like to expand my skills. I've got plans to get a metal folder, to get an English wheel, various other bits and bobs, and I want to get good at, I want to get really good at metal fabrication going forward. You know, expand my skills to hopefully one day put them into a hot rod that I can use as a retirement kind of car. So that'll be a long way away, but yeah, that would kind of be a dream build. Another one was, I've often thought it would be really cool to take a classic Escort and completely modernise it. And I don't mean the way that it looks, keep it looking like a classic Escort, but put modern engine in it, modern rust prevention. You know, you could galvanise the shell, you could put aircon in it, ABS, all the rest, make it drive like a modern car but look like a classic, and use it every day as your everyday car. Because I'll be honest, I'm not a lover of modern cars. I find it very, very hard to find a modern car that I like, and I just think it would be really cool to have a classic that you could use every day, but that would stand up to the modern, you know, modern climate. So I think that would be really cool if you could make something with all brand new parts, you know, modern run gear, but be able to use it every day because it's comfortable and reliable. That would be another dream build, I think. But again, that would be massive money, and it probably won't happen because it's just another one of these. It just grow arms and legs, and yeah, maybe a pipe dream, that one.
The next question is from Cell1990. Assuming you had both room and money for it, what would be your dream 5-car garage? Also, in hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently in either of your cars?
Dream 5-car garage, I would have to have these two in it simply because they're so close to my heart, because I built a pair of them. So these two would definitely be in my dream 5-car garage. I'm quite lucky that I have them, to be honest. I would love Mark II RS 2000 with the slanted front. I love them. I think they're an amazing looking car. I've always been a big fan of the Mark II RS too. I definitely have to have one of them, I think. Probably an AC Cobra. I think they're an amazing looking car. I love AC Cobras. And probably a hot rod of some description. That would probably be my 5-car garage, because I'm going to be honest, Lamborghinis, you know, Aston Martins, Ferraris, none of them cars push any buttons for me at all. People will say to me, oh, would you not rather have an Aston Martin DB this or no? I look at them and I just say, oh yeah, you know, they don't draw me in like classic like these cars do. I have no desire at all to have supercars or anything like that. They've never ever interested me in the slightest. I don't know why, but my garage would definitely be the type of things you see here, because they mean more to me than supercars ever would.
So the next part was, in hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently in either of your cars?
Yeah, of course there is. You could look at both builds and you could say, oh no, I wish I'd done that different. One of the main things I would like to do different, if I did have the time and I did have the room, I'd like to build them a dry build. By that I mean, you build the shell up with everything on before it goes for paint, and then every hole's drilled, every panel, everything's set to fit. So when it comes back from paint, all you do is you bolt your parts back on, and in a couple of weeks' time it's finished. And the reason I haven't done that, I've mentioned it before, is when you do it over such a long period of time, like I have to because of money, you've got brand new parts sitting in a dusty garage where you're grinding and welding it, and then your brand new parts end up getting wrecked. So that's the reason I don't do it that way. I build the shell up, I get it painted, and then I bolt all the new parts on when all the dusty and dirty work's done. If I had room to store all them parts and to keep everything separate and keep everything nice, the biggest thing I would do differently is I would dry build them. I would build them that way, because that's the best way to do them. That is definitely the best way to build a car, is to build it up with everything on and then get it painted. As for the actual car, there's nothing that screams out at me on either of them really that I would say, you know, why did you do that like that? I look at aspects of the Mini and think I can do that a lot better now, because I've got better facilities, I've got better tools, I've got more experience than what I did when I built the Mini over 12 years ago. But I still think to this day it's amazing, considering it was the first car I ever built. So there's nothing major other than, yeah, I would like to dry build them if I had the time and I had the room and I had the money to do the builds that way really.
So we've got a question from Brett. There's no last name, but his question is, what's your next build? But obviously you've covered that.
Yeah. Like I say, it will be work for other people, but eventually I've kind of touched down on what I would like to do one day. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so the question after that is from JFog13. What's your paint process for the black metal parts, handbrake, heater box, etc.?
So most of the black parts, the body shop who painted it used to do powder coating. I had a lot of the parts blasted and powder coated in black. The heater box, I actually, I think there's almost a full episode on YouTube of me doing the heater. There was a lot of time went into the heater itself. And then I started using CD coatings when the body shop closed. Unfortunately, we lost a really good body shop, as I mentioned. And CD coatings done some fantastic powder coating for us as well. But there was times where there's items that you just can't get powder coated because the oven would destroy the rubber parts or the plastic parts that you can't remove. So then I would completely bare metal. I would put them in either etch or generally etch primer. And then I would give them various coats of just spray can satin black until I was happy. I actually had a rail hanging up over the radiator where I'd hang parts up above the heat. I'd spray them, leave them hanging over the radiator, give them another coat, leave them hanging over the radiator until I was happy with them. The only problem is with that is when you spray a part using a rattle can, you don't get the same durability as you would with powder coat. It's easily marked, it's easily chipped, so powder coat is definitely the way forward. But when you can't, you've got to unfortunately do as best you can with what you've got. Obviously the best thing to do would be to take these parts to a body shop and get them to paint them professionally for you, but again, massive cost, massive time implications, So you've basically got to do what you can with what you've got and make things look really good, because you can do it with a rattle can and you can make a really nice job. It's just a bit more time consuming, that's all really.
So we've got a question from Timor Blue Tree Models, and also the same question from Ian Hammond. What do you do for a living?
So, as a lot of people have noticed from my garage, I'm a sparky by trade, I'm an electrician by trade. I was always big into the cars, as I mentioned, but I was also always big into wiring. It's been said that I've been able to wire a plug since I was 4-year-old, and that's not a lie, I actually have, because that's all I was ever interested in doing, was working with my hands. So yeah, I'm spark by trade. I'm not actually working directly in the electrical trade anymore. For people who work on construction sites, you'll have heard of permit offices where you sign on your work packs. You know, all your risk assessments are all reviewed, etc., through them offices, and that's what I do now. I'm what's called an SSC at Sellafield, where local to ourselves. That's a Safe Systems of Work controller. I basically look after all the work permits, electrical isolations, mechanical isolations, all that kind of stuff, review risk assessments, but I'm still quite heavily involved with the electrical aspects of work, and I'm actually aiming towards becoming an electrical authorised person as well, which means I can make a bit more decisions in the electrical hierarchy. You know, I can make more decisions in how things are done to maintain safety, etc. So I'm hoping to maybe achieve that this year, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I did want to be a mechanic. I did want to do, you know, to get into body work, but the reason I went down the different route was I just feel if I did it every day as my job, I wouldn't enjoy doing it when I come home. So being able to go to work and doing something completely differently to what I do at home, I think that really helps, because I don't think I'd have the same drive if I did it at work all day and then I came home. I probably wouldn't want to do my own. So that's why I decided to go down a slightly different route when it comes to my everyday job.
So we've got some more questions from Timor Blue Tree Models. One of them is, what was your first ever project in car history?
So the very first project was the Mini. That went extremely well, considering that it's my first build. I started off, didn't know exactly how well it was going to turn out, and it ended up turning out absolutely way over my expectations. I did all the bodywork myself with help from Steve and Anthony. And then it was painted, had a fantastic paint job done, and when it came back painted, it was just like a wow moment. You know, this is going to be special, and I've got to do this right. And it turned out really special, if I'm honest. So that'll always be a massive thing for me. The fact that that car gave me the confidence to go on and do the likes of the Escort and other stuff, just due to how well it turned out. So yeah, that was my first real build. Car history, I haven't actually had that many cars. I started off with a 1970 Mini Clubman, just 1,000. I thought it was immaculate, but then I soon learned that the guy who owned it before me had amazing filler skills, because he'd filled the car 90% and he'd made a hell of a job of it, to the point where the shell looked immaculate, but when you dug deeper, it was absolutely rotten. So I've actually still got part of that car, chopped the rest up. Secondly, I bought a Mini Racing Green, which is a limited edition mini production, and what I was going to do with that was, because it was a decent shell, I was going to put the clubbing front end on it and make the clubbing that you can see today. But as time went on, I realised that I wanted an actual 1275 GT. I didn't want something that wasn't what it was supposed to be. I wanted an original 1275 GT. So yeah, I ended up, I think it was the 1000cc Mini first, then the Racing Green. Then I think I bought my Rover Mini Cooper Sport, which is the Rover ones you see on the road, or did see on the road not too long back. Multi-point injection. For anyone looking to get a Mini for everyday use, they are a lovely, beautifully refined car. No choke, the start up on the button, they're as smooth as you're going to get with a Mini. I used that as my daily for 10 plus years before I retired it and ended up selling it. So yeah, that was my third car. Then I think after that I bought my Audi A3, because I was using the Mini every day and it was becoming tired, it was getting old. and I was doing a lot of miles up and down the country with Yasmin going to uni. It was starting to play up a little bit at times, and I decided I needed a more reliable everyday car, so I bought an Audi A3 S-Line Quattro. Fantastic car, absolutely loved that car. Then I think the Escort came after that. I bought the Escort as a project, just for something to get on with. And then finally I've got my Audi A5 now that I use every day, which we basically bought a big car.
You use every day?
Well, we use your car every day, but yeah, it's going to be used every day when we come to have a family. One I've missed out actually, when I had the Mini, I took it off the road for 6-8 months while I did some work on it. That was the red Cooper Sport, and I bought a little Peugeot 106 for £150, and that car did me proud. I went all over the place in that £150 car, and then I actually sold it for £150 about 8 months later. So yeah, that was another one that probably about sums it up. A couple of Minis, the Escort, and a couple of Audis. I haven't had that many cars, in fairness.
Another question from Timor Blue Tree Models. What base car did you start with on this project?
So this was basically a wrecked RS 2000 body shell. I got it fairly cheap at the time because it was that bad. No one wanted to look at it because it was absolutely horrendous. It was one of them cars where people would look at and go, you'd have to be mad to take that on. But maybe in me, I wanted something to grind my teeth on. I wanted something to keep me busy for a long time. I didn't want a 6-month project. I wanted a 6, 7, 8 year project, which is what it's turned into. So yeah, that's basically what it was. The Escort was a knackered RS 2000. The Mini was a knackered 1275 GT.
And can we have a montage of the whole build, please? I think that was mentioned earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I say, I'm going to put some more photos up going forward of the... I've already done part 1, as I mentioned, and I will do part 2 shortly. It's quite a time-consuming job to put one together, all your photos. It probably took way more time to edit that video than probably 5 or 6 other ones put together. It was really time-consuming, and that was back in the day when you were doing all the editing, because I hadn't quite learned it back then, because I'm not quite IT savvy, whereas you obviously are. Yasmin taught me how to do all the editing process, which I now do all myself. But yeah, I will do that eventually. I'll definitely get part 2 put up.
A question from Abbott Ainsbrook on Facebook. Is the heater any good?
I can't actually answer that yet because I've never tried it in anger. I can't imagine they're fantastic because they're a 1970s heater. Compared to your modern car, they're going to be pretty crap, to be honest. It works. It puts out warm air. It's a bit rattly and cranky as you'd expect for a car of that age. But that's one I'll probably be able to answer more in future as I get to use the car, because as of yet I've never really been able to try it in anger as such.
So we've got 3 questions from Jixus Crixus 1967. Sorry, I hope I said your name right then, I'm not sure. What aspect of the build gave you the most satisfaction? Not just the big budget items, engine, bodywork, paint, etc., but the smaller items and those hard to find finishing touch parts.
The biggest thing that springs to mind when I think about give me the most satisfaction was connecting the battery up after I've done extensive wiring modifications, adding all them extra fuse boxes in and relay banks to bring the wiring up into the 21st century. And finding that the only thing that didn't work out of everything was the front passenger side headlight. That absolutely blew my mind. It really did blow my mind. And the only reason the headlight didn't work was because I hadn't plugged it in properly. And to put a battery on and every single item work first time, without any fiddling about at all, I was like, wow. That was definitely a moment where I went in the house that night feeling so chuffed with myself for getting it right. Obviously starting it up for the first time is another one, but the wiring springs to mind. Having that success with the wiring first time, that definitely stands out, really does.
The second question, B, are there any specialists or part suppliers who performed beyond your expectations? I remember a previous episode when you received the car back from the body shop after painting, and you were blown away by their workmanship. I seem to remember that place soon closed after that. It
did, unfortunately. The body shop, I was really friendly with the lads from the body shop. I I used to go up there quite often. I enjoyed going up there, to be honest. I really enjoyed going up and having a crack with all the lads. It was fantastic, and especially when my car was in there, seeing the progress on it all the time. That was amazing. Unfortunately, they did close. The owner retired. They actually put me on to GS Escorts because the owner was big friends with Graham. Graham and Sammy and Jacob and the lads, and I've become big friends with the GS Escort lads. As you know, they've been fantastic to me, to be honest, GS lads, because there's times where, as you know, they do their own builds and they have a selection of parts that they will not sell because they need them for their own builds. But there was times when I needed parts and they actually pulled parts out of that stock, because, you know, one of the lads would say, oh, we haven't got one of them, and then Graham would say, oh, just go and grab one out of our private stock. And I massively appreciate that, because it helped me build my car, you know, to the standard that it is. Having them lads there helped me out like that. So yeah, I would definitely say the body shop, as you mentioned, GS Escorts. I found Retro Ford have been really good. I know I read different comments on Retro Ford people. Some people absolutely love them, other people slate them. I couldn't slate them at all. I think the quality of their products is fantastic, especially stuff like the sump and various brackets and stuff that they produce to make this engine conversion work. So yeah, they would probably be.
There's one I remember.
Really good.
When you were getting your wheels, they were on order. I think they were delayed, but the girl, Kirsty, was it?
It was Kirsty. Yeah, that's a good point. Image were absolutely amazing. Image wheels. There was a girl. I think she just worked in the office for Image wheels, and the wheels were delayed, as Jasmine just said. And she constantly emailed me every couple of days. We're at this stage, you know, this stage is happening tomorrow. She just kept me updated, and it was a fantastic experience I had from them. Absolutely amazing customer service. I really think they were top draw customer service. Yeah, you pay a lot of money for their products, but you don't always get good customer service just because you're spending big money, as we all know. But they really did go out of the way to keep me updated and to keep me happy, you know, with the fact that it was delayed, and I couldn't whinge because they were doing the best at the end of the day. So yeah, that's a good point. Image were very good.
And then the last one from Jixus Crixus is C. Do you have a list of specialist equipment used that a normal domestic garage wouldn't have? Spit frame, engine hoist or similar?
I'm quite lucky in the respect that my best mate next door and his dad have got a lot of specialist gear. The rollover jig you see in the shell on in some of the footage, or the early footage, that was my mate's. The spot welder, that's another thing that I think it's a fantastic thing to have if you're going to do a lot of body work. We actually went thirds for, that's me and two mates, Anthony and Steve. That's a fantastic item to have, that not just everywhere would have. You know, it gives you that original dimpled spot weld look. I know people like Nick Blackhurst from Bad Obsession Motorsport much prefer the plug weld method, and I can understand why, because I think it maybe is stronger, to be honest, because you do sometimes get spot weld pinion popping, but it gives you that better finish, it gives you that original finish, having a spot welder. So yeah, some of the items have been friends that I've been able to borrow. Other items is just stuff I built up over a long period of time, but nothing major that anywhere just wouldn't have. A decent MIG welder, a spot welder, stuff like windscreen fillet tools for putting your chrome strip round in your windows, little odds and sods like that, things that just make the job a lot easier. And some of these items aren't expensive, some of them are only a couple of pound tools there, and they make your life so much easier. But no, nothing majorly more. I have definitely got better tooling than when I did the Mini now. I've built up a better range of tools since I built the Mini, but yeah, still nothing over and above like what most garages would have.
Right, sorry, I did say there was 3 from Jixus Crixus, but there's one last one. D. Is there a standout difficult task in the project which you resolved with the simplest of solutions, or conversely, one which was extraordinarily complex?
If you're talking about a job that had me tearing my hair out, there's one thing that will always stand out, and that was fitting these front wings. Now, a Magnum pressed item with the bubble pressed in, and trying to get them to align perfectly with the bonnet, with the front panel, with the door, all at the same time. I think I spent 3 days per wing getting them fitting properly. It was an absolute nightmare. It made the rest of the car seem like child's play, and what I ended up doing was I actually made a little pin that sat up on a lip on the under the scuttle, under the windscreen, that had a hole drilled through the lip on the wing, so that you sat the wing over the pin. It had like a chamfered top, so you sat the wing over the pin, and then no matter where you pulled that wing, at the front or the back, it stayed perfectly in the right place at the top corner. It was just like a securing peg, and that helped massively. That's still in there now. As every time I tried to pull the wing in this direction or that direction, I ended up with a big gap between the scuttle at the top. I've seen a lot of people cutting them and moving the metal and re-migging it to get that gap right. I didn't want to do that. That was the resolve I came up with in the end, was to make a little pin to hold it in place, and it worked a treat, to be honest. At the end, I've ended up with absolutely beautiful wing gaps that I'm really proud of. So it was worth putting that time in, but by God, it was an absolute nightmare. I won't lie, they were a pig to fit.
A question from 1968 Spikey. Given we have discussed restore mods in the past, which both your Mini and Escort are, and as you know I have a passionate love of restore modded muscle cars, given a budgetless scenario, what would you build and why? Budgetless
scenario? Maybe just the ones I've already kind of mentioned. I'd love to build an everyday classic for everyday use that could, like I say, stand up to modern climate, that was as reliable and refined to drive as a modern car, but still had that retro look, or like a hot rod, as I've already mentioned. Yeah, you could go on and on and on. There's loads of cars that I love. Just recently seeing that Vauxhall Forenza at Birmingham and EC, I wouldn't mind one of them either after seeing that. That was stunning. You could go on and on and on. You know, Mini ERA turbos, they're another fantastic and very rare car that I'd love to own. But where do you stop? You could literally go on and on. You really could.
Right, so this is the last question from Tony Eilert. How easy was it to replace the roof? As you know, it's my next job.
Right, Tony, you know, I watched some of Tony's videos. Tony's got his own YouTube videos, YouTube channel as well, where he's building various similar cars to what I have here as well. The roof was an absolute joy to fit, I'll be honest. When I think of a panel that was really, really nice to fit, I think of the roof. It was a Magnum pressed item. The expressed panels, equivalent at the time, was £1,000 plus VAT plus carriage. The Magnum one was £400 delivered, all in, or £399. And I literally sat it on. It dropped into place perfectly first time. I had no alterations. It was an absolute joy to work with. Spot welded it along the front seam and the back seam in your windscreen aperture. And then right down either side in your rails, you just don't have enough room to get your spot welder in, and it would be even harder to try and plug weld. So I actually used, it was recommended by the body shop to use a modern bonding agent. They use on all modern cars. A lot of cars are actually bonded together now. So right down the side was bonded, which obviously seals at the same time, and then it was spot welded back and front, and then obviously just MIG welded into the corners where it would originally have been brazed. But the roof was a joy to fit. It really was a joy to fit. It was probably the #1 panel I enjoyed doing because of how well it went. You know, probably the wings were the worst, and the roof was the best, definitely. So yeah, if you're going to be doing a roof, Tony, I don't think you'll have any problems with the amount of metal work you've done yourself. Anyways, guys, thanks very, very much for all your questions. I really do appreciate it. It's made this video possible.
If we've missed any, then we do apologise.
Yeah.
We've tried to pick up all of
them. That's a very good point. I've tried my best to pick up on every question from Facebook, from YouTube, from all the different social media platforms, and I really do apologise if I have missed any. I haven't done it on purpose. I've tried my best to collect them all. Yasmin's been writing them down every time I've had one, so that we have them all listed. So yeah, guys, thanks very, very much for your questions. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you very, very shortly on the next usual video.